Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. I am your host, Christina Francy. And in this episode, this is called Become a Rockstar Communicator. In this episode, we are speaking with Brenden, who is the founder of MasterTalk, which is a coaching business he started to help ambitious executives and business owners become the top 1% communicators in their industry. He has coached many executives from companies like Salesforce, Amazon, IBM, Morgan Stanley, Blue Cross, and the list can go on. He is also the host of a successful YouTube channel, Master Talk, with 25,000 subscribers. Brenden, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's such an honor to have you on. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely, Christine. The pleasure is mine. So thanks for having me. To absolutely the background. Well, the story started when I was in business school, Christina. I did these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were like playing soccer, rugby, or basketball, whatever the kids are into these days, I wasn't really like that. I did presentations professionally. That's what I did as a competition. But as I got older, I started coaching a lot of the students in college because I realized that a lot of them needed help and they also wanted to win these competitions too. So when I graduated and I started working in corporate America, I had the idea for Master Talk because I realized that every piece of information that I was sharing with the students wasn't available for free on the internet. So I started making YouTube videos and it turned to what it is.
Yeah, communication is such an essential part of life. I think it's probably one of the most important tools that you can have. It helps express what you want and what you don't want in life. And even the way we talk to ourselves is how we reflect to the world, and how we look at the world is the way we talk to ourselves. So my question to you is, how do you influence others with communication?
Absolutely. So for me, influence is all about first understanding what do we need the influence for? So I call them influence goals. So whenever we want something, we need to first figure out what that thing is and then influence around that. So what do I mean by this? Let's say my goal is to influence someone to eat salad. Okay, very simple. Well, if they eat cupcakes all day, I can convince them to eat salad. It's gonna be really hard because they don't really care about it. So it's all about figuring out what are your influence goals. It could be a better relationship with your significant other. It could be more business. Figure out the goals are, and then figure out what is important to the people that you want to influence. I'll give you an easy example here. So let's say we take an example around Chinese food and Mexican food. And let's say we have a boyfriend-girlfriend situation. Okay, let's say the other person's name is Julia. Okay, we're trying to convince Julia to go for Mexican food instead of Chinese. Here's the bad way of doing it. The bad way of doing it is about making it about yourself. Oh my God, I hate Chinese food. It sucks. The service there is heinous or terrible. We can't go there. So you make it around yourself. So Julia's looking at you, well, I like Chinese food. We should be going to Chinese food. Versus communicating in a way that benefits Julia. So you could say something like this. Dear, I know how much you love that Mexican dish at the Mexican restaurant. They're having a special today where that specific taco is half off. So guess what? You can order twice as many tacos. We should go eat Mexican food. So now Julia said, oh, I love Mexican food. Brendan's right. We should go eat Mexican food. So influence is about figuring out what other people want and embodying that against it. And then the last piece is be sure you're influencing the right people. You can't convince everyone of everything. So you got to pick the right people and focus your attention on them.
Well, how do you discover who the right person is? Like, what are some key things that you need to point out in traits in people to discover that's the person that you're going to influence?
Yeah, it's a great question, Christina. I would say it really depends on what the goal is, but I'll try my best to answer this. So I'll give an example. Let's say it's about having friends. Let's say that's the goal. Having great friends who always pour into you. So the way that you do this, I call this pressure testing a network. So essentially what that is you get people to do little things for you, things that are really easy. And if they do that, their actions are mirroring the words. So think about you having me on your podcast. That is a real action. That's a gesture. So in my mind, I think, okay, I need to make sure I add a ton of value to Christina and to make sure that I'm promoting this episode for her so that she feels that I'm really trying my best to help her out too, right? So that's an example. But then there's other people, let's use this as an example because it's easy for people, say, oh yeah, I'd love to have you on the show. And then they never invite you. They never do anything. So the actions don't mirror the gesture.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means depending on what your goal is in life, whether it's to have a better relationship with your family, whether it's to make more money, figure out the people who are already the most generous to you and pour more into them by ranking your relationships and have those people introduce you to other people.
Totally. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's almost like having like boundaries for yourself too, like to not be walked over and know what your worth is. And you need to have like an exchange in the relationship, a relationship can't be one-sided. So that's a great way to break it down for people to understand it. And so my other thing is how can you talk to anybody about anything?
Absolutely. How do we talk to anyone about everything? And one other point on the first question is the idea that being a generous person isn't enough. I think this is what is missed. Because if you're generous to everybody, you'll burn out.
Of course.
Because you're gonna be generous to the wrong people. So how does this then mirror into talking to anyone about anything? I always like to say, Christina, that the more interesting we are ourselves, the more interesting we are to others. So as we become more knowledgeable, as we learn new things, it becomes easier for us to relate to different groups of people. And the reason that it's hard to be likable to all is because a lot of people have trouble mirroring the energy around different people. So here's an easy way of thinking about it. Yeah. Let's say there's two types of people that we speak to. One type of person is super extroverted, which is more my style, and they're very loud. They're like, oh my God, Brenden, so good to see you. But then you have person number two, who's very quiet. If you want to be able to talk to anyone about anything, you need to take the leadership to actually change your own energy to the person who's more introverted, or else they'll feel like they don't want to have a conversation with you. So that's really the key. It's to be a chameleon.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And understand your surroundings, get the vibes of the room, and like just kind of pick up on some like, it's body behavior too on like that. And that's a good way for people to really understand what is going on with that person, is understanding body cues, because not everyone's going to verbally tell you right out of the bat, like, hey, I don't like you. This is like too much energy, back off. They're going to do it with like maybe their hands crossed, or, I'm not a body expert, but you got to understand that, or dismissiveness,
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, so then how can we talk to anybody about anything?
Absolutely. So what I always start the conversation with, Christina, is make a list of questions that you wish people asked you more often, and just start asking those questions to other people. So I'll give you an example with me. The questions I love to get asked, like in conversation, is what are you passionate about? What are you excited about? I hate talking about the weather. I'm not one of the weather people. So I love those questions. So that's what I try and ask other people. But there's a mix between that and what the other person wants to talk about. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the person starts by asking about the weather. I don't reply with, hey, look, buddy, I don't talk about the weather. Like, I don't say that. I go along with it, but then I slowly nudge them towards the questions I want to ask them. That's how you get someone to talk about anything. And then the last piece is to figure out one point of commonality. Don't you find it interesting that if two people are from the same city, but they meet in a different city, it creates a whole lot of energy which wouldn't have existed if you just met in the city that you're from. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, you go to London. That's happened to me before. Like, we grew up in the same city, but then we became friends outside of the city. But we have that like commonality, like my old college roommate, like we literally lived in the same town. We had the same friends, never hung out, but then we became college roommates, up in the Chico area, and we're still friends now. And it's like a common thing that we have,
Absolutely. Or like when you go to London or something and you meet someone who's from Vegas, you're like, oh my God, you're from Vegas. It's like all of a sudden it's special. It's that commonality, that tribalness that we look for as humans.
It's like we're homies for life now.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some 3 key tools someone can do now to help work on their communication skills?
Absolutely. I'll give you my easy threes, Christina. And these 3 things, you don't need a partner for this. You can do this on your own. It only takes 15 minutes a day to do all 3. So the first one is the random word exercise. Take a random word like pistachio, headset, wall, sweater, and create presentations out of thin air. And what I always tell people is if you can make sense out of nonsense, you can make sense out of anything, which also means going back to how to talk to anyone about anything and influencing people. Well, you're talking about avocados, you could follow up on any question or interaction you're having with somebody on a topic that's relevant. That's number 1. Number 2 is question drills. We get asked questions all the time, Christina, in our life, in our work, on podcasts, we get asked questions. But it's important to be proactive, not reactive to the questions that we get in our life. So what does that mean? That means every day when you wake up, spend 5 minutes, just 5, answering one question that you think the world will ask you. So let's say if you're a business owner, question that a customer will ask you. If you're a podcast host, what's a question that a podcaster will ask you?
Yeah.
And answer one every day for a year. And if you do
So-
that for yeah, go ahead, jump in.
So you come up with the question and you answer your own question. Is that what you're saying?
That's
and
the
you do it every day?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great follow-up. So that's the easier way to do it. There's also another way that I like, which is you get your audience to give you a list of questions. So I'll give you an example. You could message your audience, send them an email or something, and say, hey guys, I'm really looking for topics to cover for future episodes of the pod. What questions do you have for me? And they start piling a bunch of questions. And you look at them and you go, shit, I don't have the answer to like 20% of these questions. So
Yeah.
that's how you do it.
Okay. And then the third one.
Absolutely. And then the third one is so simple, Christina, that nobody does it. And it's simply sending video messages to the people that you care about the most in your life. That's it. I'm not going to ask people to post on social media. I'm just going to say to your mom, your brother, your sister, your niece, your nephew, family, friend, your roommate from Cali, right, that you stayed with. When was the last time we sent them a video message? Not like a 2-minute thing. Go ahead. Jump in.
I have never sent anyone a video message.
There you go.
Like me doing this podcast is like stepping out of my comfort zone and being on video and putting myself out there to communicate to the world. But I never really thought of it in like a smaller scale in terms of like, let's say hi to some, I think that's genius, honestly. Like,
Oh, thank you.
how much would that put a smile on someone's face? Like your grandparents, I mean, it just kind of like, wow, that's a really good idea, I think.
Absolutely. And by the way, it's shocking to me that you're not comfortable on camera. It definitely doesn't seem to be the case just based on talking to you. So that's great. So I'll give an example. Like it's my friend David Bryan's birthday today. I sent him a video message. It took me 20 seconds. Right?
Yeah, I'm just like I'll be like happy birthday on Facebook and then send a happy birthday and maybe like an emoji or two, but how I don't know why I'm so mind blown by that number 3. I don't know why, but it like literally, like if I got a message like that, I was putting myself in like the receiving end of it and it would totally put like the biggest smile on my face. And it's so much more thoughtful.
100%. And you know what the best part is, Christina? It only takes 20 seconds. This is not like a 10-year thing where you're scripting. It's literally saying, hey, Christina, I just want to send you a video message to say that I was thinking about you. Love the work that you're doing at the podcast. Hope you're having a wonderful day. That's it.
Yeah, totally.
Simple.
I love it. Those are some great tips. So, Brenden, thank you so much. And I have 4 questions that I ask all my guests, all my first-time guests. Hopefully, maybe you can come on again. But the first question I have for you is who and what inspires you?
Absolutely. I would say people who inspire me are often mission driven, besides my mother, of course, who is mission driven in raising me, of course. I would say Scott Harrison, the CEO of Charity Water, is someone who inspires me. And there's a great quote from his book, Thirst. He's the CEO of this nonprofit to help people gain access to clean water. And the quote is, the goal is not to live forever, but rather to create something that will. that always resonated with me? What am I creating in the world that will last forever? And
Mhm.
Scott really influenced me to start MasterTalk.
Yeah. Well, what's your legacy? You know? And it's like I was listening to someone else talk, and it's going to kind of sound harsh, but like we all kind of are living to one end goal. And the one end goal is that we all have is death, you know? And it's like, how do you want to be looked at and perceived when you are on that bed, or, you know, you never know what's going to happen. Like, what is the value that you've brought to yourself? What is the value that you brought to others, you know? And yeah, so that's kind of what made me think of that. But yeah, I mean, it's adding value to the world and helping others is, I think, is such a great mission.
Uh,
Especially, you said that the person that influenced you, he's helping bring clean water, right, to people.
You got it. And another way to spin what you said, which I love, by the way, is the idea that we only have one enemy in the world, and it's the same one. It's time, and it's undefeated,
Mm,
right? So we're always fighting against time, and it's always running out. So we need
yeah.
to figure out our lives quickly so that we can leave what we want to leave before time runs out.
Yeah, I'm such a time Nazi. Like it always, I really am. I'm like, I don't think I could ever date anyone who did not have good time management skills. Like, if you're gonna be here at 8, like you better be here at 8, you know? Like I can give grace every once in a while, but
Like 801.
time management is like important to me.
I love that.
Yeah, well, and not only that, it's like I always feel like I'm running behind, you know? It's like, oh my God, I'm 35, I'm behind in life. Like, what am I gonna do? You know, and we need to like not be so hard on ourselves and give ourselves grace, you know, and that's something that I need to work on as well, because that time thing is it's real. Okay. So my second question to you is, what is something you wished you knew when you were younger?
Absolutely. I would say it's be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally cool. But if you want to do something special with your life, we need to realize that crazy people who do crazy things are often also crazy. I mean, don't you find it odd that I started a YouTube channel at the age of 22? Not on pranks, not on, all this fun stuff like skits or comedy, but on executive communication tips in my mother's basement.
Yeah.
And then I coach CEOs. Well, at the same time, I still live in my mom's basement. I love Justin Bieber. I can karaoke in 8 different languages. How does any of this make any sense? And that, Christina, is the point. When every decision in your life makes sense to the only person that matters, which is you, you're making the right decisions.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I'm 35. I just started this podcast in January. People think I'm crazy, but you know what? Like, it makes sense to me, you know? And everyone's goals and everyone's dreams look different, you know, and everyone's mission in life is different. And once we understand that we're all different and no one's ever going to be the same or have that one same goal, yes, there may be some like alignment, you know, and some crossover in some things, but ultimately, like, what makes sense to us is not going to make sense to the rest of the world. And I really liked that answer. That was a great added value right there.
Of course.
Okay, so my third question is, what's the essential part of your daily routine?
I would say for me, the most essential part, Christina, is waking up every day and listening to a podcast. I spend 60 to 90 minutes a day, almost religiously, I would say, really listening to another show,
Mhm.
listening to their thoughts, because it helps me grow. I'm not really good at books, but my advice for people would be try everything. Try the cold shower, try the meditation, and then stick with what works for you. I
Mhm.
always like to say I'm a part of AM club, not 5 a.m. club, because that's what works for me. So you got to make your own decisions, but test everything.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite podcasts?
Oh, so many. I would say my top three are Lewis Howes' School of Greatness. I'm a big fan of Lewis's work.
Mhm.
That's one. Second one's the All In podcast by a bunch of tech guys. Like you probably don't know these people, like Shamat, the Jasons, these people. And then the third one is a Masters of Scale by Reid Hoffman, who's the CEO of LinkedIn.
Oh, nice, nice. Those are some good ones. So if you guys want to check out those podcasts, you have them right there. And then my last question to you is the best advice you've ever received.
I would say the best advice that I've ever received is probably the idea that time is more important than money. My whole life, I grew up thinking money was more important than time because I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So I kept working hard. I got to make this, I got to make that. And Alex Hormozy says this best. He's CEO of Gym Launch. He also lives in Vegas. And he said that, when I was poor and 20 years old, all I wanted to do in life was to become a millionaire. And when I became a millionaire, all I wanted to do in life was to be 20 and poor again. Because you can't buy your time back. Exactly. So use it wisely.
Oh, yeah. No, that's very true. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's like focused on the American dream, and the American dream to people is money and how much you can flex and the house you have and the boat you have and the car you drive and all that stuff. And we forget to be present and living in the moment. And, speaking to a lot of other guests on my show, a lot of people forget to just live in the moment and be grateful for what they have in the now. Because you're right. You can't buy time back. You can't buy the time back with the kids. You can't buy the time back with the grandparents. You can't buy the time back with the friends, So, and we really do get lost in the whole, rat race of trying to get to where we need to go. And we need to realize that in time, we will get to where we need to go, but we have to be mindful of the time, and know that there is the plan and it may not happen overnight. And that's the thing too, I feel like with Americans as well is, we have the fast food, we get the fast deliveries now. Everything's just like fast, that like when we don't see the results quickly enough, it's not satisfactory and we give up on it and we push it away. And we have to realize that in time it will happen, but you have to enjoy the moments as you are working towards what you're going towards. So I think that's really a great answer. So before we get off, do you have any other thing you would like to add?
Absolutely. And by the way, I loved your share there, Christine. Thanks for that. And thanks for the conversation as well. This is great.
Yeah.
I would end with this question. Okay. It's a simple question, but it's one a lot of people don't think about. And it's simply this: how would your life change if you became an exceptional communicator? A lot of us dream about our vacations, the expensive things we want to buy, the cars we want to get, going back to what you said around the American dream. Whereas my version of this is, when was the last time we dreamed about our communication skills? So really start thinking about, how would your life be better? Because when you start to reflect on that question for 10, 15 minutes, you'll realize that communication is so much more than getting the next sale or getting the next promotion. Mm-hmm. It's every interaction we'll have with the people for the rest of our life.
Totally. That's a great question to leave us with. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. And this was Brenden. If you want to get in contact with him, all of his information will be below in the show notes. And I can't wait to talk to you and you guys again. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.